You know, we talked a little bit about EPDs in our last segment, and I want to dive into those just a little more deeply. Dan, just give us an overview. What are EPDs and what's their value to the commercial beef business?
Sure, Kevin. So an EPD, or an expected progeny difference, is just what the name says. It describes the difference you would expect when you have progeny of multiple animals, 2 or more bulls, for example. And the real value there is it's combining all the information that's available. So we're taking the pedigree information, the animal's own performance, all kinds of relatives in our databases, now adding genomics, and on older animals like AI sires, progeny data comes into it. And so we're getting an objective, accurate value that you can compare across farms and ranches. It pulls all the environmental differences from ranch to ranch out of it, so it's truly a direct genetic value.
And you know, many people see those as tools that registered breeders use, but they have a lot of value to the commercial cattle industry, right, Tom?
They really do, Kevin. I mean, they're extremely valuable to commercial producers. I think most producers today are looking to make multi-trait improvement. They want to improve the maternal aspect, maybe calving ease, growth, carcass. They're trying to do many different things because the commercial herd, in a sense, requires it today. EPDs are the most valuable tool to help accomplish that goal. They really do work. They work well. They've never been better. In fact, when Dan mentioned the inclusion of DNA and genomic testing, that has added value. And even our statistical methods are better today than they've ever been. And so commercial producers can rely on EPDs. They can use them with confidence, and they can improve their herds by using that tool.
You know, folks have said before, figures lie and liars figure, and there are a number of people in the beef business that have said, you know, I don't believe those things. I want actual numbers and so forth. Shane, walk us through the process. How do we collect this data, and why do we have a confidence in this data being correct?
Absolutely. Our kind of protocol at the American Hereford Association is our whole herd reporting program, and so all data comes in, or that data doesn't go into the equation. And so our breeders have the option to either submit the data through our mail system, or about 80% of our membership send data in through our real-time online registration system. And so all those phenotypes are flowing in now into our genetic evaluation, and we're producing that data on the backside through the calculation every week now in our genetic evaluation. And so we go through those same stages and protocols for birth, weaning, yearling, ultrasound information, and then as we move to some of our carcass EPDs and feed efficiency EPDs, the strength in our national reference sire program, and other breeders turning in actual carcass data, that information is flowing right into the genetic evaluation. And so with the progressiveness of I'd say several breeders within breeds, that data and getting that information and building that accuracy of that EPD is extremely important.
We'll talk a little more about genomics later, but Tom, give us a reference point. When you add then back in some genomic testing, you actually have the accuracy of multiple calves, is that right? Explain that to some of our viewers.
It is, you're correct. It's one of the greatest values of doing DNA testing on young animals, because you get the benefit of some proof. It's as if, and we've actually done the calculations on this, you actually get the same impact in terms of EPD accuracy and the increase in that accuracy as if that animal had a significant number of progeny. Varies trait by trait, but it jump starts the accuracy for that EPD and really creates a lot more reliability and predictability. So it's a great tool. And as we talked before, the new methodology that we're all using is the one-step methodology, which incorporates that DNA information on the front end of the evaluation and really allows the EPDs to be generated using a simultaneous group of equations that looks at everything at once. It's very sophisticated, and it's quite accurate, and it's a big jump forward from what we had before.
Incredible. You know, the other question I have, I'm seeing increasingly bull sale catalogs coming out, not even printing some of the actual performance data like birth weights and so forth. What guidance would you give producers who are looking through a catalog relative to what emphasis they should place on actual performance data versus EPD? Cole?
Well, I think it's important to note that some people do want to see the actuals, and some people want to see the EPDs. And I think it's a lot like any kind of bull buying experience. You want to understand that, if you see the actuals and then you see EPDs, you got to understand that it is an expected progeny difference. It's what you expect that bull to do in production, and not particularly how he weights and measures on that day. I think there's a different way to look at it. Some people do want to see that actual data to see what the performance is and quote unquote trust it a little bit more. But the EPDs, when you go into it and when you look at them, they are a very important factor of selecting how you want to build your herd in the future. Not so much on that day, but what that bull will do for years and years to come.
Dan, what would you add? What guidance do you give folks in terms of how they rate that relative information?
Sure. Well, Kevin, first, I think it's important to know as you look at seed stock to know that the data was collected. It's important that our seed stock producers continue to take the birth weights and the yearling weights and do the ultrasound measurements, that the data, in fact, was collected and submitted into the evaluation. Once that's done, though, and it's all baked into the EPD, the most accurate tool is the EPD because it weights all those pieces appropriately. And so I think that's where producers should focus their information. That sometimes when you focus on an individual data point, for example, an actual birth weight, if you go through a sale catalog and pick the bull with the lowest actual birth weight, you'll probably get one that was born to a first calf heifer, because that first calf heifer is going to have a calf 7 to 9 pounds lighter than she would when she's older. That's not going to be transmitted back to your herd. It's just an environmental thing, and those are the things that the EPD equations pull out.
We talk about EPDs, but one of the things that y'all have, I think, done a really nice job of is introducing indexes, because many times, folks' eyes glaze over when they look at all the numbers that you provide for all the EPDs. Tom, explain what an index is, and let's have a conversation about those.
Well, I think the American Gelbvieh Association created one of the first indexes about 2000 with the feeder profit index, and so it looks at all the growth and carcass traits. And so, if you're selecting bulls for terminal feeder cattle, you can use that index for high growth and high carcass traits. And then I would like to look at some of the individual components of that trait, like marbling, for instance, to make sure that that bull has an acceptable EPD for marbling and isn't all growth, for instance, with low marbling.
Economic indices are critically important. Tom, talk a little bit about that. You've got some experience there.
Right, we call them bioeconomic indexes, which is really what they are. They take the production traits and even the cost traits that we have and put those together and market weight those traits to give the producer an economic index that will affect their profitability very directly. They're, like we talked before, most producers are interested in multi-trait improvement. They're trying to do a lot of things at once. They're trying to juggle a lot of balls and kind of balance their selection. Indexes allow them to do a fantastic job of that because they weight the traits appropriately. And so, like you said, Kevin, there's lots of EPDs out there. Sometimes that can be overwhelming to a producer, but if they focus on the indexes and then maybe just a handful of the EPDs, they can still do a tremendous job. So economic indexes simplify selection decisions tremendously.
Dan, your dollar beef has been widely acclaimed across the industry. Have you seen a lot of consistency and predictability in terms of high dollar beef cattle actually being more profitable?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a real improvement through the use of that index in marbling and feedlot performance conversion. Back in 2014, we added the feed intake piece into that, and since then, our genetic trend had been increasing for feed intake. Now it's flat ever since, because now that's a part of the bit of information that Angus producers are using in selection. So you really can change a population by using those indexes and really find the most profitable combinations for the commercial industry.